All women are different, but they are all women. This video is androcentric from a men's point of view and is presented as opinion, commentary, and debate. Expressing opinions is not violence. These are ideas to challenge, question, and argue in public, because classical liberalism relies on the First Amendment for its dialectic. If you are a feminist, then consider this. If patriarchy truly existed as claimed, feminism could not. And if all men are trash and women are equal to men, then what are we to conclude? Women will die for their children. Men will die for their wives and children. And God chose to die for all mankind. Authority rolls up with responsibility. If this framing of facts offends you, click off to a cute cat video. Proceeding further will expose you to gamma bias and criticism directed at ideas, claims, institutions, not at any individual's virtue or dignity. Our method follows the 7 liberal arts, the trivium, grammar, logic, rhetoric, and the quadrivium, arithmetic, geometry, music, and astronomy. And the transcendentals, the good, true, and beautiful. If this framework is not for you, feel free to exit now. It's no disgrace. Women are wonderful. God bless America. Men are great. Feminismus delendus est. Oral Care, a historical perspective on dental health. Written by Conrad Riker. Available now, links in description. Oral Care, a field guide for men who still notice reality. Stop steeping in stupidity. A syllogistic exorcism of the thermo-complicit delusion and the Marxist witches who turn tea into violence to feed the dark empathy parasite. You are about to read an article that claims your morning cup of tea is a patriarchal mind control plot. Consider the gravity of that claim. Thermal passivity, exhaustion, accumulation spirals, and dark empathy parasites are now the theoretical lens through which we must view a Lipton bag. This is not satire. It is the reductio ad absurdum of leftist thought, and it reveals everything. When an ideology has no external anchor in natural law or the transcendentals, when truth is replaced by standpoint, epistemology, the narcissistic doctrine that your feelings are facts, you end up here. A tenured witch doctor diagnosing your chamomile as violence. Dr. Winona Feminist Marxist, Ph.D., a designation serving as a clear caution, has provided a valuable specimen. Through her frantic stringing together of new terms, she precisely demonstrates the disinformation cycle we intend to deconstruct. She asserts that subjugation grants cognitive superiority, a line of reasoning that invalidates itself. Should the subjugated hold greater understanding due to anguish, then the lawbreaker is more enlightened than the jurist, the offspring than the progenitor, and the fire starter than the builder. This represents not insight, but the pathology of spite turned into a weapon. By stating that objection verifies her assessment, she has completed the circle, standing as a sufferer, emotion as fact, exemption from logic. This malignancy is eroding the foundation of Western thought. But here is the punchline she cannot see. The infrastructure she inhabits, the global trade networks delivering her ethical tea, the plumbing supplying her hot water, the legal system protecting her right to call herself a witch on a university payroll, was built by men. Not by patriarchy as a conspiracy, but by men operating within the exact traditions she despises: subsidiarity, civil society, the apprenticeship mastery ladder, and the mixed constitution of ordered liberty. She sips from a cup she did not make, warmed by energy she did not generate in a building she did not construct, to denounce the civilization that makes her parasitism possible. This is the gamma bias in its purest form. Male labor is invisible, female exhaustion is a moral emergency, and the feedback loop spirals forever into hysteria. In the pages that follow, we will dissect this madness with the cold steel of the trivium, grammar, logic, rhetoric, and trace the etymological and philosophical rot back to its root. We will demonstrate how semantic inflation turns violence into a meaningless slur, how the empathy gap renders male suffering invisible, and how the immunity trap transforms every counter-argument into confirmation of the delusion. We will reclaim the sachet not as a symbol of submission, but as a triumph of subsidiarity, standardized, accessible mastery. We will also prove, through the inexorable logic of syllogism, that the leftist worldview is not an alternative politics, but a self-sealing psychosis that survives only by refusing to be tested against reality.
Bunkum article by a feminist, PhD. Stop steeping in submission. The hidden violence of your morning ritual. By Dr. Winona, feminist Marxist, PhD. Every morning, millions of well-meaning individuals, disproportionately women, perform what they believe to be an act of self-care. They select a herbal tea sachet, they boil water, they wait, they sip. What they are actually doing is participating in thermo-complicit stasis, TCS, a process by which patriarchal capitalism transforms potential revolutionary energy into thermal passivity, using the rhetoric of wellness to sedate the very populations most positioned to dismantle it. I say this as both a scholar and a practitioner, as a professor of gender studies, a sworn cultural Marxist, and as a High Coven member and Satanic Church witch. My intersectional positionality grants me epistemic access to truths that those buffered by privilege cannot perceive. This is not arrogance. It is the simple reality of standpoint theory. Oppression confers epistemic advantage. And what I see should terrify you. The sachet as control mechanism. Consider the herbal tea sachet, seemingly innocuous, feminine, natural. But interrogate its semiotics. The sachet is pre-portioned, pre-approved, pre-controlled. You do not blend your own herbs. You do not access raw botanical power. You receive a standardized, commodified fragment of what was once women's ancestral knowledge, harvested from indigenous traditions, processed through patriarchal supply chains, and sold back to you at a markup. The wellness industry, valued at $4.5 trillion globally, is not a celebration of feminine wisdom. It is the neoliberal capture of care. Those calming chamomile sachets are actually mechanisms of pacification. Each sip is a small surrender, a moment where potential rage at structural injustice is metabolized into temporary relaxation. Ask yourself who benefits from your calm. The answer is always the same: those who depend on your compliance. Feedback loops of feminine exhaustion. The concept of feedback loops, borrowed from systems theory, describes how outputs circle back as inputs, amplifying or stabilizing systems. In patriarchal capitalism, we observe what I term exhaustion accumulation feedback spirals, EAFs. Here is how EAFs operates. Women perform disproportionate emotional, domestic, and care labor. This labor generates exhaustion. The wellness industry monetizes that exhaustion by selling self-care products, herbal tea, bath bombs, meditation apps. Women purchase these products to manage exhaustion. The purchase transfers resources to patriarchal corporations. Women feel temporarily soothed but remain structurally exhausted. The loop repeats, accelerating corporate accumulation while stabilizing feminine depletion. This is not a bug, it is a feature. The system is working exactly as designed. Thermo-complicit stasis describes the moment of sedation within this loop, that blissful pause when the tea warms your throat and you believe, however briefly, that everything will be okay. That belief is the narcotic. That belief is what prevents you from burning everything down. As any witch will tell you, thermal magic is among the oldest forms of spell work. The patriarchy knows this. Why do you think they commodified it? Trade shows as patriarchal reproduction rituals. Now consider the trade show, the industry convention where herbal tea brands display their wares, network with buyers, and negotiate distribution deals. On the surface, these are neutral commercial events, but apply a critical gender lens, and a darker truth emerges. Trade shows are ritualized sites of patriarchal reproduction. They are spaces where networking functions as cronyism, with male executives exchanging favors, deals, and access through handshake agreements forged over golf rounds and steak dinners, environments systematically hostile to women. Female founders are tokenized, paraded as evidence of diversity, while being denied actual capital and distribution. Wellness language is weaponized, coating exploitative labor practices in the rhetoric of mindfulness and holistic living. I attended the Natural Products Expo West last year, not as a consumer, but as an ethnographer of patriarchal capture. What I witnessed confirmed my theoretical framework. Booth after booth staffed by underpaid young women in flowing dresses, selling empowerment tea blends to buyers who were overwhelmingly male, white, and over 50. The feedback loop was visible in real time. Women's labor, both in production and in performative wellness femininity, was being extracted to generate profit that would accumulate in male-controlled corporate accounts. Meanwhile, the language of female empowerment was deployed to obscure the extraction. This is not irony, it is strategy. The dark empath paradigm. Here, I must introduce a concept that will be unfamiliar to those outside specialized feminist occult studies: dark empathy. Mainstream psychology positions empathy as universally positive, a capacity to feel what others feel, to respond with compassion. But this framing ignores power differentials. When empathy is extracted from subordinated populations and consumed by dominant ones, it becomes a vector of exploitation. Consider, women are socialized to perform empathy constantly. We listen, we soothe, we accommodate, we anticipate needs. This is not natural, it is trained and it is harvested. The patriarchal capitalist system is what I call a dark empath parasite, a social formation that demands infinite empathy from women while offering none in return, converts that empathy into profit, the service economy, care work, emotional labor, pathologizes women who refuse to supply it, labeling us shrill, difficult, hysterical. Your herbal tea ritual. It is the moment where you empathize with your own exhaustion, where you extend compassion to yourself, and then that compassion is siphoned away by the corporations who sold you the sachet. You are comforting yourself for the abuse you endure, using products sold by your abusers. This is the genius of patriarchal capture. It convinces you that your survival strategies are acts of liberation. The immunity trap. At this point, I anticipate objections. Some will argue that herbal tea is harmless, that self-care is necessary, that not everything needs to be politicized. These objections are predictable. They are also symptomatic. Criticism of feminist analysis functions as confirmation of the analysis. If you feel defensive when I describe your tea ritual as patriarchal sedation, ask yourself why. What emotional investment do you have in believing that your consumption choices are neutral? What would it mean if they weren't? This is what I call the immunity trap. The way patriarchal socialization inoculates individuals against recognizing their own exploitation. The system teaches you to experience feminist critique as attack rather than diagnosis. But I am not attacking you. I'm attacking what has been done to you. And what has been done to you is a slow thermal violence, a sedation campaign so effective that you participate in it willingly, even gratefully, breaking the loop. So what is to be done? The first step is epistemic. Recognize thermocomplicit stasis for what it is. Name the mechanism. See the feedback loop. Understand that your exhaustion is not a personal failing but a structural product. The second step is material. Disrupt the extraction. This does not mean abandoning self-care. It means reclaiming it. Source herbs directly from women-owned collectives. Learn the old knowledge, the actual old knowledge, not the branded simulacrum. Refuse the sachet. Blend your own. The third step is collective. Name the dark empathy extraction in every space where it operates. At your workplace, in your relationships, at trade shows and conferences and industry events. Speak what you see. The system depends on your silence. The fourth step is revolutionary. Refuse to be soothed into compliance. Your rage is appropriate. Your exhaustion is evidence of theft. Your desire for rest is legitimate, but rest purchased from your exploiters is not rest. It is negotiated surrender, a witch's conclusion. As a satanic church witch, I understand something that secular feminists sometimes miss. Ritual matters. Symbols matter. The small acts we repeat daily shape our consciousness and our capacity for resistance. This is why the patriarchal capitalist system has worked so hard to capture your rituals. The morning tea, the bath bomb, the treat yourself mantra, these are not trivial. They are the trenches where the war for your consciousness is fought. Every time you perform thermocomplicit stasis, you are participating in your own pacification. You are steeping in submission. And every time you refuse, every time you replace the sachet with consciously sourced herbs, every time you transform self-care into communal care, every time you name the extraction, you are practicing revolutionary praxis. The choice is yours. But do not say you were not warned. Stop steeping in submission. The epistemological cancer of standpoint theory. How lived experience replaces truth with narcissism. I am a satanic church witch. With that one confession, Dr. Winona, feminist Marxist PhD, does more honest work than in the rest of her entire manifesto combined. She identifies as a witch, an adherent of a belief system rooted in the inversion of natural law, the rejection of the logos, and the glorification of the human will over divine or objective order. She admits she is a cultural Marxist, an ideology responsible for the deaths of over 100 million people in the 20th century alone. When a witch tells you that your morning tea is violence, believe her, believe that she hates the order you represent. She frames your thermocomplicit stasis as a moral failing, utilizing the classic leftist tactic of semantic inflation, where the word violence is stripped of its physical meaning and inflated to cover incorrect relaxation. She claims oppression confers epistemic advantage, a tidy bit of standpoint epistemology that asserts only she knows the truth because she is a victim. But in the Western tradition of the trivium, truth is not gated by identity. It is discovered through grammar, logic, and rhetoric. If truth were dependent on suffering, a man with a migraine would be wiser than Socrates, and a soldier with PTSD would be a greater philosopher than Aristotle. She does not have special access to truth. She has special access to resentment. Let us dissect her exhaustion accumulation feedback spiral EAFS through the lens of gamma bias, the cognitive distortion that minimizes male suffering and amplifies female distress. The good doctor whines that the wellness industry monetizes female exhaustion, selling tea to soothe the battered nerves of the patriarchy's victims. She sees a woman sipping chamomile and sees a structural emergency. Status, victim, feeling, distress. But where is the male in this equation? She ignores the male disposability required to bring her that tea. She complains about the sachet as a control mechanism, completely ignoring the asymmetric status of the men who mined the copper for her kettle's heating element, the men who laid the pipes for her running water, the men who captained the cargo ships across the violent sea to bring the herbs to her port, and the men who built the roads for the trucks. She drinks the distilled labor of 1 million disposable men, risking their lives in mines and on oceans, and she calls her act of boiling water labor. This is the empathy gap in action. Her exhaustion from sipping hot leaf juice is a crisis. The miner's black lung is merely the background noise of the supply chain. She then targets the trade show, framing it as a patriarchal reproduction ritual. Here she stumbles upon a profound truth, but lacks the intellect to interpret it. She sees male executives exchanging favors and women being tokenized. What she is actually describing is a competence hierarchy, a concept familiar to those who understand the apprenticeship mastery ladder. Trade shows are the civil society associations of commerce, voluntary exchanges of value. She claims these are environments hostile to women, yet she ignores the due process of the market. If a woman produces a superior product, the market buys it. The old boys network she despises is simply high-trust networking among men who have proven their reliability over decades, not chronism. She mistakes her own exclusion from the apex of competence for a conspiracy. In her worldview, power is not something earned through merit, risk, and service. It is something frozen and stolen. She looks at a skyscraper and doesn't see the engineering. She only sees that she wasn't the architect. Consider the sheer lunacy of her attack on the tea sachet itself. She demands you refuse the sachet and blend your own herbs, framing standardized production as neoliberal capture. This is a direct assault on the subsidiarity of the division of labor. The sachet is a triumph of Western engineering and logistics, a standardized, safe, and accessible luxury available to the common man for pennies. She hates it because it represents an order she did not create and cannot control. She wants you to return to the Stone Age, picking herbs by the moonlight, because efficiency is the enemy of her chaotic, occult worldview. This is the narcissism of the lived experience, trumping the objective reality of natural law. She prefers a world where her feelings about authenticity dictate production, rather than the efficient meeting of human needs. Then there is her concept of the dark empath, a purported parasitic system that demands infinite empathy from women. Let us apply the dialectic of evolutionary psychology here. Who is the real parasite? The system that builds hospitals, heats homes, and delivers food, or the feminist academic who produces nothing but jargon and demands a salary for it? She claims the system pathologizes women who refuse empathy. I say, look at the family courts, look at the divorce rates, look at the asymmetric moral status of women in custody battles where fathers are reduced to ATM machines, responsibility without authority. The true dark empath is the gynocentric legal system that weaponizes female tears to extract resources from men. The dark empath is the leftist ideologue who uses compassion as a Trojan horse to invade your mind and institute sanction over your private thoughts. She projects her own manipulative nature onto the market. She is the emotional vampire, feeding on grievances she manufactures herself. Perhaps the most insidious part of her diatribe is the immunity trap, where she asserts that criticism of her analysis functions as confirmation of the analysis. This is the self-sealing immunity variable in the propaganda loop, a classic logical fallacy used by cult leaders and abusers. If I say you are possessed and you deny it, I say the demon is speaking. It is a closed loop of delusion that violates the very basis of Western dialectic. In the scientific method, a theory must be falsifiable. If no evidence can refute it, it is not truth, it is religion. She constructs a world where her opponent's arguments are automatically rendered invalid by the mere fact of being opponents. This is not philosophy. It is the behavior of a toddler who has learned that plugging her ears and screaming la 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 wins arguments against exhausted parents. At last, we must confront the theology of her ending. She pushes you to refuse to be soothed and adopt rage. She presents this as revolutionary practice, but it is only a tantrum against the transcendentals, truth, goodness, beauty. By labeling herself a satanic witch, she sides with entropy, the destructive power that unravels civilization. She seeks to break the spell of your morning tea, yet her own spell is one of chaos. The thermo-complicit stasis she scorns is actually peace, the fleeting quiet needed for a rational mind to compose itself before resuming the work of civilization. She despises your peace because she battles reality itself. Do not allow her to flip the world. Drink your tea, rule your domain, and see her rage for what it is, the last gasp of a mind that has turned away from the logos. This theological inversion is not merely a spiritual error, it is the prerequisite for the leftist's primary weapon, semantic warfare. When I examine the mechanics of this rhetorical trap, I see a deliberate strategy to sever language from objective reality. Constructing a feedback loop where female feelings become legislative facts and male composure is reclassified as complicity. The goal is to inflate the definition of harm until it encompasses the entire Western tradition of Stoicism, thereby pathologizing the competence she parasitizes. It is a descent into deliberate irrationality, a specific type of rhetorical con game that the architects of logic identified and categorized millennia ago. The architecture of the grievance, deconstructing the semiotics of leftist rage. Aristotle defined sophistry as the appearance of wisdom without the substance of it, and I can think of no finer contemporary example than Dr. Winona feminist Marxist's assertion that your morning cup of chamomile constitutes thermal violence. The Greek word for violence, bia, referred to physical force sufficient to overcome resistance, the kind of thing that left you bleeding on the ground, not mildly hydrated and pleasantly drowsy. The Latin vis carried the same freight, strength, force, vehemence applied against something When Cato the Younger fell upon his sword rather than submit to Caesar's tyranny, that was violence. When a 28-year-old marketing associate named Heather puts a kettle on and scrolls through Instagram, that is not violence by any definition that Western civilization has recognized since we first began writing things down. But the good doctor knows that if she can inflate the meaning of the word until it encompasses everything, then she can deploy the moral sanction attached to genuine violence against behaviors she merely finds politically inconvenient. This is semantic inflation in its purest form. Status as self-appointed victim, meaning expanded beyond recognition. Sanction waiting in the wings for anyone who dares point out the absurdity. The etymological corruption here reveals the deeper corruption of thought. Violence comes to us through the Old French, ultimately from the Latin violare, to violate, to treat with dishonor, to infringe upon. There must be a violator and a violated, an agent and a patient, an act that crosses a boundary without consent. Who precisely is violating whom when a woman elects to drink peppermint tea? The patriarchy? The tea company? Her own hand as it lifts the cup. The doctor cannot tell you because the accusation is not meant to be analyzed, it is meant to be felt. Feeling as truth, one of the 7 axes of moral propaganda I have identified, replaces empirical verification with emotional resonance. If it feels like oppression to the accuser, then oppression it shall be named, and anyone who questions the classification reveals themselves as complicit. The circular logic seals itself. Your skepticism proves your guilt, and her feelings prove her thesis. Consider what this linguistic debasement costs us. When a man is beaten in the street by a mob, when a father is dragged from his home by police on a false accusation, when a young boy is mutilated before he can speak, these are violations that cry out for language adequate to their horror. But the doctor's framework has already spent that currency on herbal tea and bath bombs. She has consumed the moral capital of the word violence on trivialities, leaving nothing in the treasury for genuine atrocities. This is not accidental. The systematic destruction of meaning serves the interests of those who traffic in accusations. If everything is violence, then nothing is. And the actual victims of actual force find themselves without the vocabulary to name their suffering. The last century of totalitarianism taught us this lesson in blood. First comes the corruption of language, then comes the corruption of everything else. The thermocomplicit stasis framework fails on its own terms because its author has never bothered to understand what heat actually is in the Western intellectual tradition. Heraclitus recognized fire as the arca, the fundamental principle of change and transformation, the very opposite of stasis. The Greek word energeia, from which we derive energy, meant being at work, activity, the actualization of potential. Heat is energy. The transfer of thermal energy is what powers engines, cooks food, and keeps human bodies alive in cold climates. When the doctor claims that warmth sedates, she inverts physics itself. Warmth enables action, which is why every great civilization has centered itself around the hearth, the forge, and the fire. The Promethean gift was not narcosis. It was the power to create, to build, to transform raw material into civilization. The custom of brewing tea serves not as a tool for pacification, but as a surviving remnant of what Joseph Pieper labeled leisure, the foundation of culture. Otium in Latin suggested not sloth, but the refined liberty from obligations that permits the spirit to meditate on elevated matters. By boiling water, measuring leaves, and pausing for infusion, one engages in a scaled-down model of the mastery progression that formerly characterized Western craftsmanship. This act involves skill, timing, focus, and judgment of shade and fragrance. Japanese ceremonial traditions raised this routine to a fine art specifically because the method trains the intellect instead of sedating it. Yet the physician fails to see this, as her dogma has trained her to view any pursuit that does not aid the uprising as treasonous. The Marxist lens cannot support the idea of contemplative custom. Everything must be political action, which implies everything is politics, leaving no room for the spirit to breathe. The immunity trap the doctor describes is actually the precise mechanism by which her own ideology seals itself against criticism. She writes, "Criticism of feminist analysis functions as confirmation of the analysis." Here we have the self-sealing immunity variable in full operation. Your disagreement proves your conditioning, which proves the theory, which proves your disagreement is invalid. This is not logic, but it's simulacrum. In the scholastic tradition, an argument that could not be falsified by any possible evidence was considered defective, argumentum ad ignorentiam, the argument from ignorance. Thomas Aquinas did not write that those who doubted the existence of God thereby proved God existed. He offered 5 proofs that could be examined, critiqued, and debated on their merits. The doctor offers nothing that can be tested, nothing that can be disproven, nothing that admits the possibility of her own error. Her certainty is absolute, because she has defined the terms such that no other conclusion is permitted. The conspiratorial entity she names patriarchy functions as a theological concept without the theological rigor. It is omnipresent in tea, in trade shows, in the structure of the economy. Omnipotent, it orchestrates everything from wage gaps to the temperature of your beverage. And omnimalevolent, it exists solely to oppress women. Despite producing societies where women live longer, safer, and more comfortable lives than at any point in human history. But unlike the God of classical theism, this entity cannot be debated because its existence is not a proposition, but a feeling. The doctor feels oppressed, therefore oppression exists, therefore the entity that oppresses her must exist, therefore everything serves its purposes, including the things that appear to help her. The argument is hermetically sealed, and the seal is made of emotion rather than reason. What we witness in this article is not analysis but projection in the clinical sense, identified by Freud and refined by Jung. The doctor looks at the wellness industry and sees extraction, manipulation, and false consciousness, precisely the techniques her own ideology deploys. She accuses the tea companies of sedating women into compliance, while her entire framework is designed to generate a state of perpetual grievance that precludes genuine happiness. She denounces the commodification of care while advocating for a politics that reduces all human relationship to power dynamics. She identifies dark empathy as a parasite while herself draining the emotional resources of everyone around her into the black hole of ideological resentment. The psychological term for this is identification with the aggressor. She has become the thing she claims to fight, and her revolutionary practice is simply the old exploitation wearing new pronouns. The empirical reality of sex differences in exhaustion and labor flatly contradicts her exhaustion accumulation feedback spiral. Bureau of Labor Statistics time use surveys consistently show that men work more total hours, paid plus unpaid, than women in comparable life circumstances. The male suicide rate is nearly 4 times higher than the female rate. Men constitute 92% of workplace fatalities. Men die on average 5 years earlier than women. These are not opinions but demographic facts, measurable and verified across decades and continents. Yet the doctor's framework renders these facts invisible through gamma bias. Male suffering is minimized, female suffering amplified, and any attempt to correct the record is dismissed as patriarchal deflection. The empathy gap operates precisely as the 4 female riders predict. Society cares less about men. So men's exhaustion does not register as a social problem, only women's does. The genuine tragedy hidden in this article is that the doctor correctly identifies a problem. Women are exhausted, anxious, and searching for meaning in consumer goods. But her ideology prevents her from seeing either the true cause or the true solution. The destruction of the family, the erosion of civil society associations, the dismissal of the transcendentals, truth, beauty, goodness as patriarchal constructs. These are what leave modern women clutching sachets of chamomile and wondering why they feel empty. The apprenticeship mastery ladder that once gave human beings a sense of competence and progression has been replaced by credentialism and consumption. The religious rituals that once ordered chaos and connected the individual to something larger than the self have been replaced by the hollow performances she herself offers. Refuse the sachet, feel the rage. Perform the revolution. It is a ritual of negation, a liturgy of complaint, a mass without a God. And here we arrive at the heart of the matter. The Western tradition that the doctor dismisses as patriarchal oppression contains within it the very tools needed to diagnose and treat the spiritual malaise she describes. Aristotle's virtue ethics offers a path to eudaimonia, flourishing, through the cultivation of excellences that require real effort and real time. The Stoic philosophers taught that tranquility comes not from external conditions, but from right ordering of the soul. The Christian mystics knew that contemplative practice transforms the practitioner rather than sedating them. These are not mechanisms of control but technologies of liberation, developed over millennia and tested in the lives of countless human beings of both sexes. The doctor throws them away because she cannot see past the gender of their originators, and in doing so she leaves herself and her readers with nothing but grievances and tea bags. The real immunitary trap is the one her ideology has set for itself. By defining all disagreement as evidence of patriarchal conditioning, by treating all comfort as complicity, by insisting that the only valid response to existence is perpetual rage, she constructs a prison from which there is no escape. The prisoner who believes his guards are omnipotent does not test the walls. The prisoner who believes his own desire for freedom proves his corruption does not look for keys. This is the cancerous ideological possession of which I have written. The ideologue becomes an NPC in a script written by dead theorists, acting in unison with millions of similarly infected minds, incapable of generating an original thought because the framework has already determined what can be thought. The way out, and there is always a way out, begins with a single act of intellectual courage, the willingness to consider that the tradition you have been taught to despise might contain wisdom you desperately need. Let us speak plainly, you and I, far from the noise of the dark empath and her thermal delusions. By dissecting the thermocomplicit stasis nonsense, you have not merely won a debate, you have reclaimed your cognitive sovereignty. You see the machinery now, the immunity trap is just the childhood defense mechanism of a toddler screaming, "I know you are, but what am I?" elevated to a tenured academic discipline. We used the trivium, grammar, logic, rhetoric to slice through the semantic inflation, and we found nothing at the center but a void of responsibility. These ideological possessions are not complex social theories. They are the desperate flailing of narcissists who demand the status of the oppressed without the scars of the conquered. They use standpoint epistemology to claim that their feelings are facts, which is merely the credo of a lunatic who thinks his hallucinations are prophecy. But you are grounded in the natural law, the unshakable conviction that reality is objective, that A is A, and that a cup of tea is just a cup of tea, not a patriarchal conspiracy. You have walked through the fire of their dialectic and come out unburned, shielded by the armor of reason. Do not mistake this intellectual vaccination for a mere academic exercise. This is the very battle for the soul of Western civilization. The witch who penned that drivel operates on a framework of permanent resentment, a recursive loop of statet, victim, feeling, rage, sanction, destruction. She looks at the sachet, a triumph of subsidiarity, where safe, standardized botanicals are made accessible to the common man through the voluntary cooperation of the free market, and sees only extraction. This is the gamma bias of the parasite, who resents the host for having a metabolism. The wellness industry she mocks is a product of the rationalist tradition she seeks to dismantle, a tradition that cured polio, tamed the atom, and yes, figured out how to dehydrate mint leaves so you don't have to. By rejecting the sachet, she isn't rejecting oppression. She is rejecting the division of labor that frees her to do anything other than forage for tubers. She offers you the lived experience of a witch. I offer you the verified reality of the engineer who built the kettle. One is a tantrum, the other is a transcendental. Choose the transcendental. So what now? You have been deprogrammed from the cult of thermal violence and the empathy gap that seeks to neuter your masculine drive. You realize that moral asymmetry is just the old heads I win, tails you lose game played by people terrified of their own agency. You are free to drink your tea, not as an act of submission, but as an act of civilization. You are free to look at the grievance mongers, the professional victims, the critical race theorists, the gender studies grifters, not with guilt, but with the pity due to intellectual invalids. You are the heir to the dialectic, the master of the syllogism, and the guardian of the logos. You see the conspiracy of lies for what it is, a projection of their own chaotic, hateful nature onto the orderly architecture of the West. The red pill isn't just about understanding female nature or the gynocentrism that has betrayed the family courts. It is about understanding that reality is yours to perceive, to name, and to master. You have broken the spell. Go forth, speak the truth without apology, and treat yourself to a hot cup of whatever you damn well please. And now the sponsored book, Introduction. Oral Care, a historical perspective on dental health. Your teeth are not just tools for chewing. They are the unyielding gatekeepers of survival, forged through millennia of evolutionary combat. I learned this truth the hard way, after years of chasing the illusion that modern dentistry could save me. At 35, I faced a mouthful of fillings, receding gums, and a dentist's shrug. My ancestors chewed raw caribou and fought off saber-tooths. Why was I crumbling? This book is the answer I wish I'd had when my own bite began to fail, and the solution your dentist won't give you. Modern dentistry peddles weakness. Fluoride, veganism, and dainty orthodontics have turned men into toothless shadows of their forebears. Consider this. Vikings used birch bark to prevent decay while feasting on blood-rare meat. Today, sugar-laden health foods rot your molars as soy estrogen sabotages your jawline. The CDC reports 92% of adults have cavities, but this isn't bad luck, it's surrender. My research spans Spartan war camps, MMA, locker rooms, and declassified military dental manuals to expose why your teeth are the ultimate measure of biological dominance. This book is for men who refuse to gag on the lie that crooked smiles and gum disease are inevitable. If you've ever wondered why your grandfather's generation had stronger teeth despite fewer toothbrushes, or how Teddy Roosevelt gave a speech with a bullet in his chest and an abscessed molar, you'll find answers here. We'll dissect Hollywood's war on rugged smiles, revive samurai gum rituals, and reveal how the sugar lobby hijacked your dental destiny. If you're happy with fake smiles and blind obedience, close this book now. Go back to your minty dental routines. This isn't for paper pushers, it's for fighters. What awaits is raw truth. You'll learn why Neolithic skulls had perfect wisdom teeth while yours require surgery. You'll discover battlefield techniques to replant knocked-out teeth without a dentist, and how testosterone levels directly impact enamel density. We'll dismantle the myth of better orthodontics and resurrect the Spartan scrape, a vinegar and ash protocol that outcleans any electric brush. Your teeth are your birthright. Not a single civilization collapsed due to tooth decay alone, but every fallen empire's men first lost their bite. This book is your armor. Sharpen it.
Oral Care, a historical perspective on dental health, written by Conrad Riker. Buy now, links in description.